Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Balancing AI Innovation and Data Governance. Tynes and AWS share strategies for secure AI adoption. We're excited you could join us for today's session. My name is Megan Billingsley, and I'll be moderating today's event. Our speakers will be sharing real-world advice and best practices for implementing generative AI while continuing to meet data privacy, security, and compliance standards. Our expert speakers will talk about how Tynes leveraged a secure by design approach when building and shipping new AI features. In particular, they'll highlight how the partnership between AWS and Tynes made it possible for Tynes to adopt this approach. We are thrilled to be joined by our speakers, Stephen O'Brien, Head of Product with Tynes, and Ashok Mahajan, Senior Solutions Architect with Amazon Web Services, or AWS. Before we get started, I have just a few housekeeping items. Please note the slides will advance automatically throughout the presentation. To enlarge the slides, click the Enlarge Slides button located in the top right corner of your presentation window. If you need technical assistance, click on the Help widget located on the bottom left corner of your console. We encourage you to submit questions at any time throughout the presentation using the Q&A widget at the bottom of your console. We will try to answer these during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or we run out of time, it will be answered later via email. Please know we do capture all questions. So to kick off, I'd like to ask each of our speakers to provide a quick introduction of themselves and their work. Stephen, would you like to go first?
Absolutely. It's great to be with you. I'm Stephen O'Brien. I lead the product team over at Tynes. A little bit about me. I'm originally from Ireland. I now live in the Boston area. My background is in various parts of software. So software engineering, leading software teams, being a software founder, and now leading a product organization here at Tynes. Tynes is the smart, secure workflow builder. It's a tool that security and IT and some other teams use and trust us with their most important automated workflows, things like phishing or employee onboarding and so forth. And my role as head of product is really all about problems. It's about understanding our customers and their problems, the problems with our software, the problems in the world that we want to fix. And today I'm excited to talk about a few of those in the form of AI.
It's wonderful to have you with us. Thank you. Ashok, how about you?
Sure. Thanks, Megan. Happy to be here with you and Stephen. Hello, everyone. My name is Ashok Mahajan, and I'm a Senior Partner Solution Architect at Amazon Web Services. I'm part of the global startup team focusing on startups. And in my role specifically, I work with security startups in their enablement journey on AWS that focuses on co-build and go-to-market motion. Been in information security for close to 18 years now, with expertise in identity and access management, application security, data protection, cloud migration, and more across multiple domains. I'm based out of New York metropolitan area and been with AWS for the last 2 years.
Wonderful to have you. Thank you so much. So let's dive into the discussion. There is so much excitement about generative AI right now. Across industries, organizations are understandably eager to implement Gen AI to take advantage of the productivity and efficiency gains that it can enable. This puts software vendors under pressure to deliver new AI features quickly. At the same time, stakeholders are raising security, data privacy, and compliance concerns. They worry that the information used to train models might be inadvertently or maliciously exposed. And they fret about whether or not generative AI systems can meet data localization, retention, and deletion requirements, along with other regulatory mandates. Organizations need to develop effective strategies for mitigating these risks while also providing models with enough data and context to allow them to solve problems accurately and effectively. So let's start by diving into the challenge in greater depth. And Stephen, I'll start with you here. Why is it so difficult for organizations to build AI features that actually live up to this technology's promise?
Yeah, you put it very well with the use of that word eager, which I think is a kind of a polite word. But I think vendors are sort of rushing. Everybody knows that this is the big tech landslide right now, and that if you're not taking part and you're not incorporating this technology into your product, you're making a mistake. And I think that's adding to this eagerness or this rushing. I might begin with a bit of a hot take, which is that if you're really honest about it and you look at all of the Gen AI features that are being shipped by various vendors right now, the majority of them actually just don't work that well. And that's kind of shocking, right? Vendors are typically very cautious about what they put into their products. I think that eagerness, that hype cycle is drawing out this different behavior. There's a few parts to it. The first is that there's never been a software technology component that allows you to build incredible demos so easily. And yet, there's never been one that is so difficult to pin down in production when producing true rigorous pieces of software. So it's almost very, very easy to get to the crawl or the walk, quite hard to get to the run when it comes to this software. I think that's because AI is non-deterministic. It's all about the gray area. If you ask the same question twice, you can get two subtly different answers. And that's very different from the sort of traditional world of bits that we're in computing, where things have a definite answer, black or white. So it's that hastiness in the development that's leading to the issues that you're talking about. And then on the other side, on the buyer's side, or what users or stakeholders care about, you mentioned security and data privacy. I think you're spot on there. For those reasons, as a security vendor, when we started building our AI features, our top priority was to ensure our solution was secure and private by design. So we sort of accepted the fact that we may need to even move slower to meet that foundational need we had. And there's so many things that entails. I think we'll talk about some of them today. When it comes to secure and private by design, a few obvious ones. Never ever using customer or user data to train the model. We're never using what happened in customer A's conversation to influence what happens in customer B's conversation in a way that could mix their data. Interestingly, though, when you start building these AI features, even as a vendor who cares a lot about security and privacy, you discover this interesting trade-off that I think exists in building AI features between those two things, between privacy and the quality of your feature.
That's really interesting, Stephen. Can you tell us more about that trade-off? Like, why is it so hard for so many of today's organizations to build AI features that are both useful and secure?
Yeah. So put yourself in the shoes of one of these vendors who's rushing to catch up to this technological marvel. So you got to build some AI features. The easiest way to use large language models, which is what we're typically talking about these days when we say AI, is to do what I call AI via API. And what I mean by that is using the web HTTP APIs of providers like OpenAI or Anthropic or these other wonderful companies directly. So in other words, just hitting their servers with questions you want to ask their language models and getting answers back. That's pretty much how everybody starts prototyping. Now, as I mentioned before, the building of highly rigorous, production-ready AI features is hard. Actually navigating those gray areas, incorporating into your product, and just making something that works beyond the demo is a challenge. But I'm gonna just skip past that part. So let's say we're a vendor, we've done it. We've got a feature that demos well, but now actually works too. All of a sudden, we realize the way we're building this with AI via API is not great from a privacy point of view. So we've got our quality high, but we're suddenly realizing, damn, we're gonna, to make this actually happen in production, we're gonna need to send customer and user data over the wire on the public internet to this model provider to get back what we need. And suddenly that starts raising alarm bells. Just to give one example, there's an infinite number of examples, but one would be if you're subject to GDPR, this EU legislation, which almost every vendor is, you will now need to inform your customers that you have a new sub-processor of their data. So because you're sending some of their data to this large language model provider, you're gonna have to tell them, send them an email and say, hey, we're now sharing your data with OpenAI. And that is a great way to risk your business if you have security conscious customers. So then what teams will do is they will say, okay, let's reduce the amount of data we're sending. Let's mitigate this. Perhaps we'll take out some of the personally identifiable information, or we'll just ask the AI fewer questions. And that eases the burden on the privacy side of the equation. But all of a sudden, the quality of the feature goes down. And so you're caught in this catch-22 between privacy and between quality. So I'll just summarize by saying, when you work with large language models, you provide context and then your question, and they literally call it context. So the whole point with these models is the more context you put in, the better the result. And if you're worried about sharing data with a model provider, you're not going to be giving enough context.
Megan, just to add to that, I like the way, Stephen mentioned the word eager and the rapid growth of GenAI. I think we have all seen the evolution of GenAI in last a little over 1 year, right? We can easily say 2023 was all about testing and learning, whereas 2024 is all about real world use case. So when you want to build a GenAI application that is unique to your business need, we all can agree that your organization's data is your differentiator. When you think about it, right, every company has access to same functional models, but the companies that will be successful in building GenAI application and provide real business value are those that will do by using their own data. You need to make sure you are training your models on high quality data. And by using your own data, you ensure that the responses that your model is providing meets your business unique requirement and your customer needs. So when you think about data, every organization is concerned about data privacy and security, the point even Stephen was highlighting. Data availability and access is a major concern, and moving data is not easy. Many of you have already large amount of data residing in cloud, data lakes, and databases. So it is much more meaningful to bring generative AI capabilities directly to where your data lives. Organizations are also concerned about data leaks, hallucination, and toxicity in AI models. You must have heard the term responsible AI. It is necessary to put guardrails in place to detect sensitive data like PII and block harmful content across hate, bias, insult, violence, and more. Another challenge is in the field of AI is advancing rapidly, but that is also making it difficult for organizations to keep up with the pace of following the best practices, both in functionality and security. Even though GenAI brings promising new innovation, it is also important to understand that GenAI is not a standalone application. It is deeply integrated with other workloads that you already have running in your ecosystem. Therefore, we need to apply a holistic defensive depth security approach at every layer of technology. That includes your compute, container, storage, database, analytics, networking, edge, and more. Stephen talked about GDPR and other compliance and regulations. I think that also plays a big role in any security implementation. Ensuring compliance with relevant laws and industry standards is crucial for building your trustworthiness and following the security best practices. I think I can easily say that being in InfoSec for so many years, security is often treated as a source of friction, and addressing these challenges requires collaboration between your AI developers, security experts, and stakeholders to ensure whatever we are building are both useful and secure at the same time.
Excellent points. Thank you both. How did Tynes overcome these challenges when building its own AI features for security operations teams? I would imagine that this user base has pretty high standards when it comes to security. Stephen?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to really just pick up actually where Ashok was there with this idea that, where your data is already residing, that's where you want to run your AI infrastructure. So I'll sum up my whole answer. I'll go deep on this in a moment, but I'd sum it up by saying we avoided doing AI via API. So by avoiding that previous approach I mentioned, where you're talking directly to a third-party model provider, sending data to them on the public internet, getting back answers. By avoiding that, we had the chance to opt out of the privacy quality trade-off. In other words, we could not have to worry about privacy and have high quality. So let me explain what I mean by that. It's actually kind of simple. When you build a web application on cloud infrastructure like AWS, which we do, you are going to trust at least one vendor, right? You're going to be trusting your cloud provider. Again, for us, it's AWS. And we use all sorts of services in AWS, databases, compute, other things. Of course, those databases is where the data lies, to Ashok's point. The point is we've already assessed AWS. We trust them. We have defined a secure perimeter with all of their services running inside it. And so when it comes to adding a language model or AI, the right way to think about it is it's just another service. So we want to be able to adopt exactly the same sort of threat and risk posture with respect to that as to any other part of our system. And so we found a way to do this on AWS, but maybe I'll just talk about this at a high level first. It's about really, bearing the trust of that customer data you have and keeping it inside that secure perimeter. Again, it's about thinking about an AI model just like any other piece of infrastructure in your stack and making sure it's not a special case on your infrastructure diagram. I'll just use an analogy for a second. Imagine you're building a feature that required storing data about customers. Nobody today would directly connect to a third-party database and interface with it over the public internet. And yet somehow that is currently the default for how many teams are building with AI. So to avoid all this, I'll get to our implementation on AWS. There's probably ways to do this on other platforms, but we didn't find a story as good as AWS's. So we are building these features on AWS Bedrock alongside AWS Private Link. So Amazon Bedrock, I'll speak about very briefly. It's a service that allows you to run various different language models with very strong privacy guarantees. So this is, it's part of our Bedrock, I guess, because of this reason. So for example, they have a very strong no training guarantee and no logging. And then AWS Private Link, this other service I mentioned, that adds the private connectivity needs that we have. So by using Private Link, we can talk to Bedrock without any routing on the public internet. And that keeps everything inside that secure perimeter I mentioned. So generalizing beyond AWS for a moment, I think there's really 4 details that we wanted to find in our ideal AI solution. Firstly, we wanted that internal infrastructure feel. We wanted to have the language model running inside our secure infrastructure perimeter, avoiding any public internet routing. Secondly, we wanted to have access to the very best language models and to a range of different language models. Thirdly, we wanted to have those strong security guarantees, so a vendor that was taking things like no training or no fine tuning very seriously. And lastly, scalability and easiness. Ultimately, the reason why you use the cloud is to hand off the technical ownership of data centers to somebody who really knows what they're doing in the form of AWS. And so we wanted to have that with AI as well, to be able to turn this thing up and down on demand. And I think, we were very happy to find strong answers to the 4 needs we had there on Bedrock with Private Link.
Megan, I can add a bit more context about how AWS capabilities make this possible. As organizations migrate and build on AWS, our customers actually benefit from a cloud and network architecture built to meet the requirements of most sensitive organizations, including government, financial services, and healthcare. Stephen talked about Bedrock, but when we talk about AWS GenAI services and features, I'll go a bit on that, and we basically categorize them in 3 different layers. The bottom layer is the infrastructure for model training and inference. This includes the chip like AWS Trainium and Inferentia. And those who are not familiar with it, Trainium is our purpose-built chip for training machine learning model, and Inferentia is our chip optimized for running inferences on these models. AWS also provides you the most advanced virtualization, powerful petabyte scale networking capabilities, hyperscale clustering, and the right tools to help you build. AWS Nitro systems provide enhanced security that continuously monitors, protects, and verifies the instance hardware and firmware. Amazon SageMaker offers the widest selection of FMs and access to the latest publicly available FMs for faster time to market. With SageMaker, you can build, deploy, and train ML models at scale. To go along with this infrastructure, you need to have the right tools to build with LLMs and these foundational models. This is where Amazon Bedrock comes into play. With Amazon Bedrock's comprehensive capability, you can easily experiment with a variety of top FMs, customize them privately with your own data techniques such as fine-tuning and RAG, and create managed agents that can execute complex business tasks, from booking travel, processing insurance, to creating ad campaigns and managing inventory. All this without writing any code. And just like any popular AWS services, Bedrock also offers multiple features and benefits. Since Amazon Bedrock is serverless, you don't have to manage or worry about managing the infrastructure. You can securely integrate and deploy generative AI capabilities in your application using the AWS services and feature you're already familiar with. Bedrock offers a variety of high-performance foundational models from leading AI companies like AI21 Labs, Anthropic, Cohere, Meta, Stability AI, and Amazon through a single API. Stephen talked about some of these security features of Bedrock and best practices. When you think about Bedrock security, you are always in control of your data. And I want to stress on this point. Much of the risk in today's world can be mitigated with common security practices like encrypting your data, enforcing a policy of least privilege, isolating your workload in VPC, filtering traffic with firewalls, and automating threat detection and incident response, which is basically a strong suite with Tines. In addition to that, you can use AWS private links, which Tines actually use with Bedrock, to establish a private connection between the VPC in your account and Amazon Bedrock Services account, basically avoiding public internet exposure. And when we look at the top layer, we have applications that leverage these LLMs and foundational models, such as Amazon Q and Amazon Q Developer. Amazon Q is a generative AI-powered assistant that makes your organization data accessible, write code, answer questions, generate content, and manage AWS resources and take actions. Amazon Q maintains access control of your data. So if a user cannot access your data outside of Q, they cannot even access within Q as well. So basically, you have features and security capabilities at all these layers that you can utilize based on your specific needs. And since data, and I should say latest data is always a key to your AI models, AWS streaming services make it possible to capture changes in your data as they take place. So you're not running models on old and stale data, but instead you are using near real-time data to make your decision making easy. So AWS offers these services and features that enable you to build generative applications that meet your organization's specific goals, and most importantly, meet your specific customer needs as well.
This is all really exciting. I do think that our audience would like to see it in action. So, Stephen, can you show us what your team has built on AWS Bedrock?
Absolutely, I'd love to. Let me jump in here and share my screen. So I'm going to show you one of our newest releases. This is just one of many AI features now on the Tines platform, all of which are powered by Bedrock and Private Link as discussed. And I'm going to show you Workbench. So this is our recent release. And I think Workbench is by far our most ambitious and useful AI product yet. And again, really resting on what we learned along the way and that trade-off I mentioned, that privacy quality trade-off and how we were able to overcome it. So Workbench is an AI chat product. And I'm going to give you a really simple example to get this started, just to show you the lay of the land. So I'm going to ask, can you name some famous graduates of UCD Dublin? This is where I went to college. Unfortunately, I think I'm not going to be on the list, at least not yet. But let's take a look at what it comes back with. Okay, so Workbench here has responded just like you could expect a tool like ChatGPT or others to respond, with excellent general knowledge. So these are pre-trained models. They know all about the world. Under the hood, this is running Anthropic Claude Sonnet 3.5, which I think is the very best model available today. And it's correctly told me that the most famous graduate of UCD, where I went to college, is James Joyce, so a great writer of the 20th century. So let's go ahead and ask another question. I'm going to ask, what is the weather right now where James Joyce was born? I'll just say where James was born. Now, if you ask this question on ChatGPT, it's going to know a lot of things. It's going to be able to unwrap this. So it's going to know that James refers to James Joyce. I'll make this a bit harder. Right now, in the suburb where James was born. Okay, let's see. So again, ChatGPT would get much of this correct, but it would struggle to really understand the exact weather at this moment in time because it doesn't have access to that live or proprietary data. So where kind of conventional AI chat tools end is where Workbench begins. And you can see what it's done here is it's used an API and it's able to actually call that API to get live data about the weather. Yeah, it's correctly inferred which suburb James Joyce was from. It's passed that into an API and it's giving back this information. It's even giving it in the local units that you'd expect in Dublin, Ireland. Let me just show you under the hood for a moment. So this API call, it passed in this input, location, Rathcar, Dublin, and it got back scientific data from an API. So this is what we call a tool in Workbench, kind of following that metaphor. And then finally, Workbench was able to summarize all that data and give us back really human readable interpretation of what it means. So the sun has already set there. Now, what just happened? Well, you'll see this left-hand bar shows tools. And these are the tools that Workbench is able to use. And one of those tools I've configured is this simple weather API. I've got a couple of others configured here as well. And you can see there's a long list of these tools. We support pre-built tools for pretty much all of the major vendors you want to use as a IT or security team. But in this brief conversation where we've just asked about some general knowledge in the weather, we've covered a bunch of the features of Workbench already. I want to show you a few more, though, in the form of a more realistic end-to-end example. So let's start another chat. And this time, I want you to imagine that we are a security analyst in a company who's just got paged because something bad has happened. And what's happened is that an AWS bucket, so a storage bucket on our AWS infrastructure, seems to have been made public. So I'm gonna ask Workbench for some help. Looks like the bucket Tines demo 27 was made public. What should we do? And again, if you ask this question of a general AI chat tool, it would probably be smart enough to know that bucket means AWS S3 bucket, but then it would really just tell you what you might be able to do. Workbench is going to actually be able to help us. So the first thing is it's going to suggest we check, we fact check what I'm telling it, and it's going to use the AWS CLI, one of these tools, to communicate with AWS and find out what state this bucket is in. So again, under the hood, we can tap in here and take a look. It's using the AWS CLI, and it's found out that yes, this bucket is indeed public. It's correctly pointing out this is a security risk. It's giving some potential next steps. Now, I actually don't want to go ahead and remove the public access policy from this bucket. So first of all, I'm just going to give it a bit more context. I'm going to say, it looks like Stephen O'Brien. This is the name of the person I see that changed the bucket. Looks like Stephen O'Brien changed the bucket. Can you look him up for me? Okay, so now Workbench is using a different tool here. And this is really interesting. So we have two types of tools. We've got templates, which refer to out of the box, general APIs that Workbench can talk to. You just have to connect with a credential. But then we've got stories. And stories are fully custom automations that you can build in the Tines automation platform. So we have one of those called Lookup User in Multiple Platforms. And Workbench has gone ahead and used that tool to look up this employee, Stephen O'Brien. So we're seeing a bunch of information here about him, including his job title and department product. Workbench is thinking, maybe somebody in product would have the right to change AWS resources. He's in a leadership position, but still looking a little bit suspicious. So as a security analyst at this point, I've figured out who's involved. I've determined the severity of what's happening, the fact that it is a public bucket. And now I need to actually understand why this has happened. So a great question to always ask is, where is the employee currently, or what are they doing right now? So I'm going to ask, is Stephen working right now or out of office? And Workbench is going to reflect on the whole conversation so far, as well as the tools available. And now it's going to ask this tool, Bamboo HR, which is our, in this example, it's our HR information system. And it's fetched this information, which is looking quite interesting. So Stephen O'Brien is currently out of office. Looks like he's taking a very long vacation for taking the whole last quarter off. That sounds very nice. I wish that was the case for the real Stephen O'Brien here. But as a security analyst now, this is very worrying because I'm seeing an employee who's out of office is taking, affecting potentially critical infrastructure. And now I'm fairly certain that he's been hacked. So this is a major incident. I've got to act right now because this attacker could be doing damage as we speak. So I'll say, let's go ahead and reset sessions and password. To see if Workbench can help with this. So first off, again, it's always interpreting what I'm saying in the context of the conversation. It agrees here by saying, yes, this is a prudent next step. And look at this. So whenever Workbench is about to take action that could be irreversible in any way, it will always stop for confirmation. So it is suggesting tools that you could use, but it's never pulling the trigger on something potentially irreversible itself. But here, this is exactly what I want to do. I'm going to go ahead and confirm. That's running. Fantastic. So we've now got a temporary password. The attacker will have been signed out. There is one last thing to do, though, which is to repair the bucket. So I'll just say, now let's fix the bucket. I think this is one of the most powerful aspects of Workbench. Let's look up here. We've had such a long conversation already. We've mostly been talking about the employee, but now we're going to return to the scene of the crime with the bucket and restore its public access block. And Workbench has no trouble with this. It has the full context of the conversation. It can go ahead and suggest the right thing to do. I'll go ahead and confirm this. And once more, it's using that AWS CLI. I have to confess, huge AWS fan. I've been using the CLI for about 10 years, but I always struggle to remember the arguments. And so I love that Workbench was able to assemble this very difficult command for me to put the right access block in place. So that's been completed. And finally, Workbench is just going to go ahead and double check. It's going to verify that the bucket is now in the safe configuration that we expect with one last call. And we're seeing exactly what we want to see. Okay, so if I was a security analyst, a real one in this case, I wouldn't be quite done. I'd want to understand, how did the hacker gain access? what are the remediation steps, what case management system to document this in. But I think what you've seen here is the ability for AI to be extremely useful in the heat of the moment, connecting with lots of different systems. And once more, I want to just kind of frame this in that trade-off, right? We talked about privacy and quality. Because all of this is running in a very safe, region-scoped, tenant-scoped, within our general Tines infrastructure here, we haven't had to worry about filtering this information before it hits the language model to get its opinion. Quite the opposite. In fact, the whole point of this product is that it's fetching that data from various proprietary and real-time sources, and then it's giving this language model, again, a fantastic language model, Claude Sonnet 3.5, giving it full access to that data in order to make the best inferences and to take the best actions. So, like I said, I think this is our most ambitious release yet, but we're really pleased at how we've been able to overcome that trade-off with Bedrock. So I'll stop the share there, and we can get back to the presentation.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was very interesting. We have had some questions come in from our audience. So just to dive right in, our first one here says, what safeguards do you have in place to prevent hallucinations in your AI features? And how do you make sure their output is accurate?
Megan, I can take that. So there are several features and best practices that are typically employed to prevent hallucination, right? I think everything with GenAI pretty much starts with data. So ensuring high quality, diverse, and well-curated training data is crucial for preventing these hallucinations and inaccuracies, right? Techniques like data cleaning, deduplication, and filtering out low quality or even biased data can improve that model performance significantly. Using RAG allows you to provide responses and factual information from trusted source, within your organization as well. AWS Bedrock, we talked about it pretty much throughout the presentation, provides guardrail features, which provides contextual grounding checks that can detect hallucination in model responses based on a provided reference source and user query. One thing that we cannot overlook is incorporating human feedback and reinforcement learning techniques that can help AI systems learn from their mistakes and basically refine the output over time and improve accuracy. Regularly monitoring the AI system's performance, identifying issues or drift, and updating the model with new data and feedback is essential for maintaining accuracy over time. By combining these approaches, the risk of hallucination can be significantly reduced and mitigated, though it is important to note that no system is perfect, right? So an ongoing vigilance, improvement, and monitoring is required to maintain high standards of accuracy and reliability in the system.
Just to build on your point there, hallucination happens in both language models and humans, right? If you ask a human to really try and remember a detail of an experience they had that they can't quite remember, they will eventually guess, and our memories often work that way. It's the same for the AI. I think you normally see hallucinations when it's at the edge of its knowledge, when it's a bit patchy, it's something it hasn't seen many, many times before. And so in Workbench, what we're doing is we're fetching fresh data, right? You saw we fetched that data from Bamboo HR. It didn't have to guess who's out. And so those techniques that you mentioned, Ashok, or RAG and others, I think they can often boil down to just give it the data, give it the objective data it needs to make its decision.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Our next question here asks, what questions should I ask when evaluating products with AI?
Yeah, I'd love to jump into this one. So I'm going to just restrict myself to two. The most important question is, does this really work? And I can't overemphasize this one. So as I mentioned before, it's very easy to build demoware or something exciting with AI, but a feature that's actually rigorous and works in production for production use cases is unfortunately kind of rare at the moment because a lot of those vendors are eager or in a bit of a hurry. So does it work? Try and take the demo off script. Try and bring one of your own real use cases to the table and make sure it works for that. But just be a little bit skeptical and definitely test or do a POC or a POV before parting ways with your dollars. That'd be my first tip. And then the second one on the privacy side. So if the first one was on the quality side, on the privacy side, just ask a vendor very clear questions about where the data is going. A simple way to do this is to ask about sub-processors. And I think a vendor who's building responsibly with AI shouldn't need to change their legal terms a lot to incorporate the technology. So when we shipped our features, we actually did not need to update our terms of service because AWS were previously a vendor that we worked with. They remained a supplier of ours, but we didn't have to add any other new relationships or new risks. What you'll see in some cases is that vendors actually will have a whole standalone set of terms for their AI features only, or they'll have a whole standalone set of sub-processors for their AI features only. And I think that's a tell, that's a bit of a hint that that vendor is maybe playing a little bit too fast and loose with your customers' data.
And I think that's significant, right? Initially, when I was talking about the Bedrock and AWS services and features, I think I mentioned that it's not a new capability altogether, right? It's going to work with your existing capabilities, existing services and features. So it is important that you follow the same guidelines, same best practices, same feature set that is available to your customer and what your customers are familiar with. So I think that's the key aspect. If you're trying to develop something net new and come up with new terms and conditions and policies and procedures, it's going to be really tough to maintain and even please your customers as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Our next question here asks, can you give some advice on how to choose the right LLM for a particular use case?
I can take a stab at that first. I don't think there's a magic recipe to this. I think it's all about what use case you're trying to solve and what is the real need that you're trying to address. So I think the first important aspect is start by clearly defining the specific task or application you want your LLM to be used for, right? Different LLMs excel at different things. Like some might be good at text generation, some might be good at answering questions, some might be good at summarization and code generation. So define your task, that what is the problem you're trying to solve, right? Second aspect is assess the performance of different LLMs on your specific task or look for similar benchmark, right? You can look at the metrics like perplexity or task specific evaluation metrics. You can leverage your own evaluation set, or you can use an existing benchmark. In fact, Amazon Bedrock supports model evaluation jobs that you can use to choose a model that best suited for your downstream generative AI applications. Another significant aspect is LLMs, vary significantly in size, right? From millions to billions of parameters. Large models generally perform better, but they're quite heavy on computational resources, right? So evaluate the trade-off between performance and resource requirements for your specific use case. LLMs also inherit bias from the training data, which can be problematic for certain applications. So evaluate the bias potential as well. And I would say before committing to any specific LLM, it's best to do a proof of concept or trial or a pilot project to really evaluate the model's performance in your specific use case and your environment. But it's not once done and you forgot about it, right? Monitor and update regularly. LLM technology is evaluating really fast. We have new models, we have new improvements coming every day now, right? So it's important to look at that aspect. And while we do that, not to forget the licensing requirements or some restrictions that are put in for some of these models as well. So in a nutshell, I think it is important to note that choosing the right LLM is an iterative process, right? It may require experimentation and evaluation, and sometimes even combining LLMs can be useful for your specific needs. So evaluate, see if it fits your specific ask, and then go from there.
Perfect. Thank you. Our next question says, what is the difference from tines and configuring API calls with an LLM agent like GPT-4?
Yeah, really interesting question here. So I suppose ultimately in Tines, we let you use AI in lots of ways. And this might be referring to what we call our AI action. So when you're building automations in Tines, you can use our AI action to ask our language model a question at any point in your workflow. Now, we don't support the LLM mentioned in your question, GPT-4. That's not available on Bedrock, so it's not part of our offering. But we do have several other LLMs. And to the previous question, you get to pick which LLM you want to use based on your particular use case, whether that's a small, cheap one or a big, slower, more intelligent one. Now, when it comes to integrating with language models beyond the set we provide, we actually let you do that as well. So if you really wanted to use GPT-4 or connect to your own Azure account where you're running that, or your own OpenAI account where you're running that, that's totally possible. So in general, what we've tried to do here is not to restrict you from building with customization if you want to, or doing AI via API if you can really trust that API, but rather to give our customers and users a secure and private default that without them thinking about it is going to be very, very careful and non-promiscuous with their own data.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Our next question says, our company is currently building an internal AI policy. What would you recommend that we include in it?
Megan, I can take that. And I think that's a really good question. And I think a lot of customers face this challenge when they start their journey. So when it comes to internal AI policy development, establish clear ethical principles and values that will guide the development and use of AI within your organization. Implement training programs and awareness campaigns to educate employees. Define a governance structure and process for overseeing AI development and deployments. Implement guidelines, standards for development and testing of these models, and establish a process for monitoring that aspect, especially when it comes to a compliance and regulatory needs. Establish policies and procedures for how the data is collected, stored, and used, especially when it comes to your vendors and your contractors and more. Incorporate responsible AI practice throughout your AI lifecycle and ensure that there are mechanisms in place for human oversight and control over your AI system, especially in a scenario where you have a high-stake decision-making process or application with a significant societal impact. Establish channels for engaging with relevant stakeholders. And I think that's really crucial to keep that communication channel open, which also includes your employees, customers, regulators, and the broader community to make sure, one, you receive the feedback, and second, you address any of their concerns, especially when it comes to your organization's AI practice. And I would say just one last thing, to regularly review and update the AI policy to reflect the changes that are coming in with this technology, because like I said earlier, this technology is changing really at rapid pace. So it's important to regularly review, update your best practices, update your AI policy in that aspect.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think we've got time for one more question, so we'll end with this one. What logging or visibility is there to Workbench activities done by others? For example, if admins or teams wanted to see what was done by a user or find out who made an adjustment, how easy could that be done?
Yeah, great question. So again, in the demo Workbench I showed, this is probably what prompted the question, but we were talking to all sorts of external systems. We were querying AWS, we were changing bucket permissions, we were querying, employee data. We were resetting passwords. So much high privilege stuff there. So the answer is I think interesting, because when we were building Workbench, and really when we were building our AI features in general, we had this realization where Tines has existed before large language models were a thing. We've been building this workflow platform for about 6 years. But there's really a sense in Workbench that we're taking so much advantage of the existing platform that it almost feels like we were accidentally building this whole thing for AI in the first place. So to this question, the audit trail, who took what action, this is something that we've been designing and building at Tines for years. So automations in Tines or actions that users can take, those are backed by a very comprehensive set of sophisticated audit logs. So which user in which role with what permissions in what team took what action when. All of that is exportable and searchable and filterable. You can even alert and monitor it. We've built various concepts like RBAC and teams, and the ability for teams to share certain pieces of information with other teams in an organization. And basically, Workbench taps into all of that. So what I showed you today with the AI interface, that's really sitting on top of that whole Tines platform. And because our platform is centered around connecting to things securely, taking actions, we're really just making those capabilities now available to a language model. And I think it's interesting because some of the language model products out there are trying to build in the other direction, right? They're trying to add like the ability to take actions in the outside world. But actually, there's a lot of really hard problems to solve there along the way that we've been lucky to already solve, and this is just one of those. So yeah, our customers who are using Workbench, they can feel pretty safe and secure in the knowledge that this is being tracked just like any other piece of user interaction with systems and services, as happens in Tines today.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That does it for us today. I'd like to thank our speakers, Stephen and Ashok, for a great discussion. We appreciate you taking the time to share your insights and expertise with us. And I'd also like to thank our audience for joining us today. We hope to see you again soon. Have a great day.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.